Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever this finds you. I want to welcome you to Mornings with the Murph for today, February 13th, 2023. I am your host, Sean Murphy, and today we got a packed show for you, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be talking all things Super Bowl 57. The Kansas City Chiefs pull off the unthinkable. Patrick Mahomes leads the Chiefs over the Philadelphia Eagles. However, as it's been all season long, the game has a massive asterisk because of terrible officiating. We'll talk about that here in a second. Also, we're going to be talking about the NBA trade deadline, the winners, the losers, what I think of the Pistons trading Saddiq Bey for James Wiseman now that the trade is finally official. But first, let's talk the big game. The Kansas City Chiefs ultimately won 38-35. I, of course, picked the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game, and for the first three quarters, it looked like a pretty solid pick. I mean, especially the first half. The Philadelphia Eagles looked downright dominant. Jalen Hurts perhaps had one of the best games of his professional career, minus the fumble in the second quarter, which I know a lot of people are going to come in and say, well, actually, Sean, the game wasn't ultimately decided by the refs because the Eagles had the fumble. They were outscored in the second half. They allowed the Chiefs to score on every single possession, which, yes, the Eagles did a lot of things and shot themselves in the foot in a lot of ways that ultimately allowed the Chiefs to get back into this game. Patrick Mahomes did pretty much whatever he wanted. He was 21 for 27, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns. He wasn't on the field for long, but when he was, he got done. But at the end of the day, the entire game is all going to be viewed by that one moment, that one flag. I mean, people in Detroit, we are not new to seeing teams have their seasons be affected by terrible officiating. I mean, just over a month ago in Seattle, Rams, Seahawks, a terrible roughing the punter call that ultimately allowed the Seahawks to win, which eliminated the Detroit Lions from playoff contention. And then a week later, Adam Schefter comes out with reports from league executives saying that the Lions should be furious and that there needs to be an investigation into the NFL's officiating. But during media week, during media availability, Roger Goodell says the officiating's the best it's ever been. Oh, bull. It is the worst it's ever been, and it is the most glaring. You can make the argument that, yes, the technology is better than ever. And us as the fans and the observers at home, the people in the stands, we are allowed to view everything from a super slow motion at every single possible angle via replay. And that is how we can see whether or not it's a penalty. And those refs have the difficult job of having to make those decisions in real time on the field. However, when it's a hold that you can have a genuine debate on, and sure, we could pull out the NFL textbook on officiating. You could pull up the definition of defensive holding, and if that meets the minimum requirements, sure, fine. Any other possible drive, you can make that call. Not there. Not then. Not when the bottom line of the game is on the line. Not when legacies are defined by these moments. The NFL officiating allowed themselves to decide the fate of this game. Because of that call, there was no chance for the Philadelphia Eagles to retort. There was no chance for overtime. There was no chance for the players to decide who the best team on the field was. And yes, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes did some downright wizardry. The Chiefs' running game in the second half was incredible. We came into this game talking about the rushing attack of the Philadelphia Eagles, but it was the rushing attack of the Kansas City Chiefs. But all of that is thrown out the window when you have an ending like that. We all know of the series Game of Thrones, one of my favorite shows of all time. Game of Thrones, in fact, one of the highest rated shows in the history of HBO. And the final season is widely regarded as one of the worst seasons of television in history, in one of the worst endings to a television show that we've ever seen. And because of that, Game of Thrones is viewed in an entirely different light. Yes, it still has an immaculate legacy. There's still incredible performances. It's still one of the greatest television shows ever made. But man, is it important to stick the landing. In that game right there, to have that type of moment, to leave that sour of a taste in fans' mouths, to have fans now have to debate whether or not officiating caused that game to go the way it did. When we have the grandest moment, 100+ million people watching, and that holding call is what you allow it to decide the game. It was one hand on the left side of his waist, and it was a brief tug of the jersey. If that is enough to decide the Super Bowl, we have to seriously reevaluate this entire system. Now, I know any of NFL officials are not full-time employees. That is something that is regularly brought up to attention, that these guys only work a couple days a week. Clearly, that has to change. I mean, NFL, what's your excuse? Well, is it not in the budget? Do you not have enough money? We saw the entire night advertisement after advertisement after advertisement, and the Super Bowl is a massive commercial reminder of how successful of a business the NFL is from a financial standpoint. All of the stars were in attendance. The entire world stops to watch the Super Bowl. It's considered a holiday in America. And you let that game have that type of ending, that type of effect. And that's where NFL officials need to realize that you have to, at a certain point, allow players to play the game. If you're going to reach the flag, there has to be a part of you that stops and says, will this impact the result? Did he really, there should be a automatic review on that type of call, even if it's painfully obvious. Because if there was a review, if they were able to go back and look, well, I'm not sure if you can necessarily say that's a hold, and they're able to overturn that, and we were actually able to have the Eagles get a drive and actually have a fair chance to possibly force overtime. But instead, the refs pull the flag. Everyone watching at home has to realize that this drive, this amazing moment, because the Super Bowl, as great of a game as it is, as high quality of a product as the football is, as awesome as the halftime show was, as funny as some of the commercials were, as good as some of the food is, everyone remembers the Super Bowl for the final 2 minutes. Legends are made, stars are born, careers are written because of what players do to lift their team over the top. And never once have we celebrated because a guy in a pinstripe shirt pulled a yellow flag. But now, instead of celebrating an amazing game, the accomplishments of Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, the Kansas City Chiefs, and everything that they did to pull off that game, we have to talk about the officiating yet again. Because this league refuses to acknowledge that there is a problem with officiating. Well, now you're going to have to, because you have an entire fan base. Whether you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, whether you're a neutral fan watching at home, the fans were the ultimate losers of the Super Bowl last night. The Eagles were robbed downright. They absolutely deserve every right to be upset. But it was the fan that lost, because the officials robbed the fans of that excitement, of that moment, of what people wait the entire year for. The refs ruined what was a remarkable season of football. And you know what? If we don't start having a conversation, if we don't start seeing some reform in the official rankings, fans will stop tuning in. If it keeps getting worse, people will get frustrated and get fed up. I mean, for God's sakes, we have to have a philosophical debate on what the is a catch. I saw a tweet that said, I don't know what I'm going to do when my kid asks me, Dad, what's a catch? Because it's harder to tell you what a catch is in the NFL than it is to tell you what the meaning of life itself is. I mean, bloody hell, guys. We have a problem here. And the sooner we acknowledge it, the sooner we can move forward and start actually addressing some of this. But man, despite an incredible performance from the Kansas City Chiefs and some downright brilliant play calls. I mean, some of the jet sweep stuff that Andy Reid and the Eagles were doing there, immaculate. I mean, especially that fake jet sweep when he was going in and then he went out and he just walked in for a touchdown in the fourth. I mean, my jaw dropped. It was beautiful football. I mean, Andy Reid, that second half, he showed why he's the best coach in football. He showed why he's one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the game. He showed why he deserves to be talked about as one of the Mount Rushmore coaches in this league. But we're not going to be talking about that. Instead, we're going to be talking about that flag. What a damn shame. All right, let's move on to the NBA trade deadline, something that makes me a lot happier and something that I'm not nearly as pissed off about. So, we're going to talk about winners and losers because a lot went down. First of all, I think that was the greatest NBA trade deadline of all time. Agreed? I mean, I can't possibly think of one that can top that. I mean, as big as the James Harden trade was last year, I mean, how many times have we seen a James Harden trade at this point, right? I mean, like, it's kind of like death, taxes, James Harden or Kyrie Irving's getting traded. But Kevin Durant getting traded, Matt Ishbia taking over the Phoenix Suns within 12 hours, trading for Kevin Durant. Damn. First of all, the Phoenix Suns are winners. The Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, are also winners. Despite the fact that the Brooklyn Nets did not get an all-star, they did not get back anything that is nearly going to match the value of a Kevin Durant, because you just can't get that in a trade. It's not humanly possible. However, what you can do now over the offseason, if you so choose to, is you can trade some of these pieces and possibly collect more picks. However, at the same time, if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you don't really have much of an incentive to lose games because of the fact that your picks go to the Houston Rockets over the next 2 years because of the trades you made, to build that big three that is only played 16 games together. But anyway, the Phoenix Suns, yes, you gave up a lot to get Kevin Durant, but now you have a legitimate window to win a title. I mean, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Kevin Durant, and then in the offseason, you can possibly, let go of Ayton and get more depth and build around and get a solid roster and a better bench around those guys too. I mean, over the next couple of years, if the Phoenix Suns don't win a title, this will be a disaster. However, I think it's a pretty damn good bet to make, especially having Devin Booker be the number 2 player on a team that's going to make a run for the finals. I mean, he was awesome as a number 1 option. He's the best number 2 option in the league, like by far. But also, another winner, the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, they got off the Russ contract. They actually got some decent depth and some solid players. I mean, Jared Vanderbilt is a hell of an NBA player. D'Angelo Russell, he's grown up quite a bit, and he fits that Lakers roster a hell of a lot better than Russell Westbrook does. I mean, Malik Beasley, another guy who can play basketball. Mo Bamba, a guy who can come in and contribute. This is a team that is significantly better. This isn't This isn't a team that's going to make the Western Conference Finals. They still might get bounced in the first round. In fact, it's still entirely possible because of how bad of a first half they had that they might not make the playoffs altogether. But this sets themselves up much better over the seasons to come. They have a decision to make again over this offseason. If they give D'Angelo Russell the extension that we all are fearing that they could, they very well could be in a Russell Westbrook situation all over again. So what Rob Pelinka does this offseason is crucial. But for once, Rob Pelinka actually did some good moves. Good job, Rob. Like, holy cow. A team that's definitely not a winner of the trade deadline, a team that I would say is a loser, has to be the Golden State Warriors, just because of the circumstances of everything that happened with that trade. And with that, also a loser is the Portland Trail Blazers. So first of all, Blazers, they allegedly, according to the reporting from Sham Charania and Adrian Wojnarowski over the weekend, allegedly withheld important information about Gary Payton II's health, about the abdominal injury that he is experiencing. The Golden State Warriors did not pass his physical. However, they decided to go through with the trade because of the fact that it saves them $40 million in luxury tax money, and you still get Gary Payton II over the next couple of years, and potentially for the playoffs. However, you still don't get that help right away that you needed on the perimeter. You gave up 5 second-round picks, and there's no guarantee that Gary Payton II comes back as the same player. And if you're the Portland Trail Blazers, if they indeed withheld information, they're going to face significant sanctions. They very well could lose draft compensation. And that is a team that cannot afford to lose any of the chips that they have at the table, because if they have any desire to build around Damian Lillard, they need to do everything by the books. And if it comes back that they're going to lose a second-round pick or a first-round pick because of this, that's rough, because their window is already looking very, very bleak. The Blazers also brought in Cam Reddish, which I don't see why everyone believes Cam Reddish is just all of a sudden going to be this all-star every single time he gets traded. I mean, sure, he's shown that he can score the basketball, but at the same time, he's received a ton of DMPs wherever he's gone, and it almost feels like there's a reason because of that. I mean, like, all the reporting suggests that his attitude and his demeanor isn't the greatest, so I can't really speak for that because I'm not around. However, if there's smoke, there's fire. If a guy's getting traded around as much as he is, there's a reason. I'm just interested to see what happens with Portland, but regardless, they're not exactly setting themselves up for great things in the future. The Detroit Pistons, I don't know if I would call them a winner or a loser. They ultimately traded away Sadiq Bey and in return got James Wiseman. It's an interesting play because, yes, the Pistons did not want to sign Sadiq Bey to a long-term extension. Reportedly, reports, from James Edwards III suggest that the Pistons, some people in the organization were maybe growing tired of some of, Sadiq's shot selection and, maybe the way that he was developing his game and the direction he was going. They wanted him to maybe do, less is more, just catch and shoot, because that is where Sadiq is at his best. Whereas, Sadiq really wanted to play more isolation. He wanted to handle the ball and expand his game. And, he thinks he can be more on the offensive end. And so, listen, I think it's a move that makes sense. Troy Weaver seems to love James Wiseman, and the Pistons are abysmal as far as, blocks, points in the paint per game. They do need more rim protection, despite the fact they have Jalen Duren. This is a small team, so it does give him size in that sense. And Wiseman, he really wasn't given a fair chance in Golden State, if you think about the fact that with his health and also, with the fact that you're asking a guy to come in his very first year and be a contributor to a championship level team. That's just unprecedented. We don't see that in the modern NBA. That hasn't been done since Magic and Bird were playing. So I just don't think that's something that's entirely feasible or something that's reasonable to expect. Another potential winner is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, don't get me wrong. I think this trade's getting way overhyped because of the fact that Jay Crowder literally hasn't played basketball for 2/3 of the season. However, Jay Crowder, when healthy and when at his best, is a pretty damn good basketball player. If you're getting another guy who can defend in the perimeter, bang in the post, but also, occasionally hit some clutch threes for you as well. I mean, that's a win for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, this team, for God's sakes, is on a 10-game winning streak. Giannis Antetokounmpo looks unstoppable. I mean, let's be honest. This Milwaukee team, when healthy, has not yet been beaten in a playoff series. And so I personally am fascinated to see what Boston can do against Giannis and Chris Middleton and Joe Ingles and now potentially Jay Crowder. I mean, this is a much more dangerous team if Jay Crowder is effective for them. And the fact that they didn't have to give up much, I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks, they always seem to get value each and every year at the trade deadline. So the fact that the Bucks made themselves that much better, they went out and got someone to, shore up some of their depth. That's exactly what you need to do when you are a contender level team, or if you have any aspirations. Hey, you know who should maybe look at that and should take some lessons? A loser at the trade deadline, the Miami Heat. Bloody hell, what did you guys do? Nothing. You traded Dwayne Dedmon away, and that was it. There are reports that you wanted to offload Kyle Lowry. That didn't happen. You had potential, thoughts of going out and maybe getting a star or a better player. That hasn't happened. Russell Westbrook, you could perhaps sign him in the buyout market, but even then, I don't know what a Russell Westbrook, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo trio is going to give you. I mean, I think it's inherently interesting, Russell Westbrook in the Miami Heat organization alongside Eric Spoelstra, but I don't think it's something where Russell Westbrook would be able to come in and actually make a strong impact for them. I mean, for God's sakes, Dave McMenamin reported that people in the Lakers organization called him a vampire to the locker room because of the energy that he was draining from his teammates on the court. I mean, that is the prognosis that Russ is getting. Yikes. But anyway, another team that did not take action, and that is definitely a loser. Two teams, actually, that should have been sellers, should have done a lot more at the trade deadline, but didn't. The Toronto Raptors and the Chicago Bulls. Let's start with the Raptors. You had the golden opportunity to reboot your franchise, take a year to get in the lottery, get some assets, trade away Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, get a metric ton of picks, trade Fred VanVleet, see what you can get for him as well, and then take all those assets, build around Scotty Barnes, reboot the Toronto Raptors, and let's get this thing booming again. Instead, they went and traded for Jakob Poeltl, who, yes, Jakob Poeltl is a good player. He is reportedly best friends with Pascal Siakam. They have ties from the Raptors 905 days. But for God's sakes, reports suggest that this team feels like the East is wide open now that the Brooklyn Nets traded Kevin Durant. If this team really believes that they have a chance now that Kevin Durant is no longer in the conference, I have bad news for you. And another team that seemingly felt the same way was the Chicago Bulls. Listen, man, I get that you want to be relevant. I get that it's been really rough waters ever since Michael Jordan left the Chicago Bulls and Derrick Rose tore his ACL. But you can't possibly think that this core has anything going for it going forward, do you? Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. You could have gotten decent value for Zach LaVine. You could have gotten the New York Knicks to overpay for Zach LaVine. You could have had something to maybe start over a little bit. But instead, they're going to keep themselves in NBA purgatory. The Bulls are currently 26-30 and are in the 10th place spot. The Toronto Raptors are right behind them in 11th. If one of these teams, if neither of these teams make the playoffs, I don't feel bad for them in the slightest because they deserve the fate that they gave themselves. Now, a team that's surprisingly a winner at the trade deadline, and it's a relatively minor trade. The New York Knicks getting Josh Hart, a guy that, yes, he hasn't been shooting the ball well this season, but a guy that has chemistry with Jalen Brunson from their Nova days, a guy that is solid on the defensive end, a guy who Tibbs is going to love. And they really didn't have to give up much to go get him. I mean, like this Knicks roster, I'm not saying that they're going to do anything special. In fact, they're probably just going to be bounced in the first round in all likelihood. But give some respect to the New York Knicks. I mean, they might actually be able to go trade for a star in the next couple years, maybe. I mean, I still don't believe they're going to be able to do anything as long as James Dolan's their owner. But man, Jalen Brunson's been balling out for him this year. By the way, a lot of people on Pistons Twitter and in my YouTube community from Half Court, which by the way, go subscribe to From Half Court, shameless plug, told me that Jalen Brunson was just a bum and that everything that he did last year was not representative of the player that he was. Well, that was bull. The last loser of the NBA trade deadline, and perhaps the biggest loser if you talk about the value that they could have gotten and the leap that they could have taken, the Memphis Grizzlies. They went out and after reports suggesting that they made offers for OG Anunoby, after reports saying that they were calling about Mikal Bridges, after reports suggesting that they made an offer for Kevin Durant, they ended up getting who? Luke Kennard. And listen, I don't want to knock Luke Kennard. I mean, we all know he has ties to the Motor City, but is that really the thing that's going to put you over the hump? I mean, yes, Memphis is one of the youngest teams in the league. They still have insane assets going forward. Their future is insanely bright. Why is Dylan Brooks still on this team? Why didn't you do everything you could to go get OG Anunoby? I know the Raptors said he wasn't for sale, but damn it, bang on that door that much harder, man. You needed to go get a versatile wing. You needed to make an upgrade for this team to have a chance because this conference is wide open. No. I mean, according to Ja, the West isn't a problem, right? I mean, this team's falling apart. The last team, and we're talking winners or losers, I'm going to put this team in the TBD category. And you'll understand why here in a second. The Dallas Mavericks. Now, on paper and in a vacuum, they were able to go out and get the all-star starting point guard in the Eastern Conference to pair alongside Luka Doncic. And I mean, the results so far, the wizardry on the offensive end could be downright terrifying. However, we all know the deal with Kyrie Irving. Whatever can go wrong, will go wrong, and at some point, he will cause distractions. And yes, they're in a trial period right now. They're feeling each other out. They're seeing if this is maybe a long-term fit for Kyrie Irving. But if this is the big swing that you're going to take to go get a star to pair alongside Luka Doncic, don't you want to make sure it's someone that's a little bit more reliable? Don't you want to make sure it's someone that couldn't perhaps blow up your franchise or leave in a couple months? Or someone that you can maybe predict or know that's going to be on a court on a day-to-day basis? I know people are talking about, oh, well, Kyrie, he only missed games in Brooklyn. He only played 5 games at Duke. He missed several games in Cleveland. He missed several games in Boston. He missed 130-plus games in Brooklyn. The guy just misses games. He's not available. At some point, Kyrie Irving is going to cause a problem. And we have a plethora of evidence at this point to suggest that that's the case. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. And so, Dallas is playing a very delicate game here. It could pay off massively. But, oh my Lord, could that blow up in their face. With that, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Mornings with the Murph. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this episode, be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you share with your friends and join in the conversation down below. But also, I will catch you guys on Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Mornings with the Murph.